Have you ever felt exhausted from trying to control the river with your own hands? Life flows with a force indifferent to your plans, and with every unforeseen event, the weight of your rigidity becomes an anchor that drags you down. Anxiety is not a character flaw. It is the exhaustion of a soul that fights against the fundamental law of the universe: impermanence. Imagine, for a moment, achieving a lightness so profound that joy becomes unconditional, a state that persists no matter what happens in the external world, a serene strength that resides in non-resistance. Are you ready to discover the wisdom that transcends modern exhaustion and anxiety? This transformation will not be found in another empty productivity technique, nor in the illusion that positive thinking can stop the storm. It is not about shielding yourself against pain, but about learning to dance with it, accepting that true solidity lies in the flow. The key is an ancient knowledge, often lost and fragmented by the relentless pursuit of having rather than being. The philosophy of Daoism, personified in the master Zhuangzi. The Chinese master, alongside Lao Tzu, revealed the secret to permanent joy. He taught that peace is only found when you give up desperately searching for it, because peace is the natural state that emerges when the internal struggle ceases. Prepare yourself, for at this moment, we will reveal the first key to freedom, the acceptance of impermanence. I invite you to dive deep, to release the breath you have held for so long, and comment, "I am the void that allows." What defines the fatigue of the struggle that we carry? This feeling that we are always falling short, always racing against time. Your true war is not against the world, against external circumstances, but against impermanence within yourself. You cling to outcomes, to moods, to identities that are, by nature, fleeting. The anxiety that consumes you is the inevitable cost of trying to be an immutable rock in the river that never stops, of forcing stability where nature demands flow and renewal. This rigidity is the root of modern weakness. You try to silence the internal noise with more activity, with unattainable goals, with a forced optimism of superficial guides who promise quick fixes. But emotional stagnation persists, because you try to fill what Lao Tzu called the essential void with external noise and possessions. The essential void is the space of pure potential. The value of your life is not in what you add, in possessions, in labels, in achievements listed, in accumulated praise, but in the internal space, the void. It is this void that allows joy, creativity, and clarity to enter. Our common solutions fail because they promise external change to cure an internal wound, selling you more control. You seek temporary relief, but what is missing is the key piece that only the philosophy of Zhuangzi can offer. Joy is unconditional, for it does not depend on what happens, but on your willingness to not struggle, to flow with the Tao. You are exhausted because you try to be a fortress, when you should be the mist that adapts to the valley. History shows us that the ancient sages did not seek happiness as an end in itself, but rather clarity and harmony with a natural flow of life. Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi were not self-help gurus, but cartographers of the soul. They mapped the path to a freedom that is neither geographical nor financial, but purely internal, a freedom achieved through non-resistance. They bequeathed to us a knowledge that has been lost in the speed of our age. The principle of Wu Wei and the power of detachment. It is through the lens of Zhuangzi that we understand the paradox of lightness. Peace is only found when you give up the desperate search for it, because peace is your original state. This source of ancestral knowledge gives us the authority to go beyond obvious solutions. It invites us to doubt our own rigidity, our excessive seriousness. If this wisdom resonates in the calmest part of your mind, if you feel the invitation to a profound relief, if you are ready to drop the anchor of control, subscribe and activate the bell. Here, every reflection is a dive into waters that heal the exhaustion of the soul. There was a man, let's call him Lin, a talented craftsman who spent his life carving jade pieces. Lin was obsessed with control. Every vein of the jade, every crack, every small imperfection of the stone was a source of deep anxiety. He tried to force perfection, sanding and polishing to exhaustion, fighting against what he saw as the inherent flaws in the stone. Externally, he was a master, admired for his precision. Internally, a slave to his own rigidity and the shame of not being perfect. With every failure, his ego, trapped in the identity of the unshakable master, screamed and condemned him. One day, amidst his frustration and the pain in his hands, he read the story of Lao Tzu's water collector, who never tried to retain what could not be retained, but always found the level of the valley. Lin realized that the true beauty of jade was its impermanence and its raw nature. The flaw was not a mistake, it was the stone's character. His Zhuangzi journey began when he finally dropped the tool and decided to stop fighting against the stone's flow, and instead dance with it. He understood that failure was not the problem. It was the reaction of guilt and shame that stole his lightness. He transformed from a rock, which breaks under continuous pressure, to a bamboo, which bends in the wind. This change was not temporary. It was a profound, inevitable, and permanent transformation. He was ready for the revelation of the 8 layers of detachment that would free him to unconditional joy. Lin's journey, and yours, is a path of 8 stages that frees us from toxic seriousness. The sage does not get rid of the world's gravity, but learns to be light and dance with it. First layer, the rigidity of identity. Your greatest tragedy is the clinging to the version of the self that cannot fail, to the image you have built for the world. Suffering emerges from the rigidity of fixed identity, for when the world changes and demands adaptation, the ego shatters. It refuses to be less than the label it was given or chose for itself. Zhuangzi teaches us that strength is not being the rock that breaks under continuous pressure, but the bamboo that bends in the wind, returning to the center after the storm. The acceptance of your imperfection, your fallibility, is the true resilience. The greatest act of courage and freedom is to stop taking yourself so seriously, allowing yourself to be imperfect without the condemnation of the inner judge. Second layer, the silent factor. Where does your mind reside now? Most often, it is caught in the non-now syndrome, in the past, regret, guilt, or in the future, anxiety, excessive planning. The present, the only place where peace and true power reside, is the only one we reject for being silent and demanding stillness. The relentless search for meaning and purpose is, paradoxically, often just an escape from the stillness of the present. Meaning is not found in grand achievements. It is revealed in the silence between thoughts. The practice is simple and powerful. The Taoist minute. Focusing attention on the breath before every transition, when getting out of bed, before eating, when closing the computer, when answering a call. The present is the ground you are always seeking, and the breath is your unbreakable anchor. Third layer, the error of overdoing. The modern mind confuses frenetic activity with clear direction. Continuous hustle is the addiction that fills the void left by detachment and stillness. Lao Tzu's principle is Wu Wei, action without effort. The most effective action is that which is unforced, perfectly aligned with the natural flow of things, like water finding its path without trying to impose it. It is doing what must be done, without the ego clinging to the outcome. The result will come, but your peace will not depend on it. It is the paradox of efficacy. Slowness, calm, and detachment generate more lasting results, for they conserve vital energy. The calm and focused rider goes further with less strain. Fourth layer, the paradox of the name. Your deepest pain ceases when you accept that life, in its vastness and complexity, does not bend to your labels. The mind creates the prison by naming and judging the flow of existence into rigid categories: good/bad, success/failure, right/wrong. The free sage does not cling to the opinions of others and, more importantly, does not cling to their own rigid expectations of how life should unfold. Do not fight the shadow that accompanies you, your flaws and fears. Do not confront them. Just bring the light, the full awareness, to them. The shadow dissolves in acceptance, because what the shadow fears is being seen without judgment. Fifth layer. The revelation of the mirror. Your mind is like a lake. The state of Mushin, mind without mind in Zen, clearly teaches us. You cannot reflect clarity and truth if your lake is agitated by the waves of reactive thought. Stillness is the prerequisite for clear vision, the revelation of the mirror. Chronic stress is the constant dissonance between what is and what should be. Acceptance switches off the fight-or-flight response, returning the system to its natural state of peace. The antidote to doubt and paralysis is deep calm. When the mind is quiet, the next step emerges naturally. You don't need to force clarity, you need to allow it to appear on the surface of the serene lake. Sixth layer. The strategy of laughter. Zhuangzi's most underestimated tool, the enlightened fool, is existential humor. The greatest virtue, and the key to lightness, is not the somber seriousness of the tormented man, but the ability to laugh at oneself and one's own importance before the vastness of the universe. The relentless pursuit of external validation is the ego's heaviest anchor. Light joy belongs to the one who has freed themselves from the need to prove their own worth to themselves or others. The everyday example is the unforeseen event, the humiliating failure at work, the social blunder. The inner turn is not to fix the mistake with immediate perfection, but to see the lesson and the humor in life's inevitable chaos. Seventh layer. The practical application. Contentment does not require the exhaustive search for the extraordinary in the distant, but the humble search for the sacred in the ordinary. The warm tea, the rhythm of the walk, the fullness of the breath. It is the simple routine of the sage who finds the cosmos in every detail. The mental model of containment is crucial. Do not try to solve 10 problems at once. Choose the vital point and resolve it with the calmness of water. Water does not fight. It flows around, erodes, and transforms through gentle persistence, not brute force. To accept is not to resign to passivity. It is to recognize what is real, so that, from that naked truth, you can act with total clarity, liberated from internal resistance. Eighth layer. The inner turn. The final consequence of non-resistance is the peak of freedom. You don't float because you made an effort. You float because you stopped struggling. Freedom is achieved by surrendering to the discipline of the present moment. It is the inner turn that breaks the cycle of anxiety and exhaustion. What you seek, peace, purpose, joy, is already here. The act of detaching from the effort to control is the key for the universe to manifest what is essential for your flow. Joy is the sound the vase, the void, makes when the wind passes. It is what remains when everything is removed, and what remains is your essence. If this philosophy resonates with you, subscribe and activate the bell. Here, every reflection is an invitation to unconditional lightness. For the duration of this reflection, you may have felt a deep pause. Focus now. Feel your spine straight, your shoulders relaxed. This subtle lightness, this relief in the center of your chest and in your mind, is not an idea. It is an immediate subjective validation. It is your nervous system responding to the cessation of internal war. The absence of judgment and the acceptance of where you are right now release an energy that was previously used to fight your own shadow. The physical and mental exhaustion you felt before begins to give way to a gentle tingling, to a clarity that does not need to be forced, but that emerges. You are experiencing Wu Wei, non-effort, at the most fundamental level, the silence of your reaction. The path to stay joyful no matter what happens is not a checklist, but a system of unconditional fluidity. You don't need to build a dam to stop the river. You need to become the serene bank that observes, but which, by its nature, is not swept away by the current. The unified lesson of Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi is the synthesis. Wisdom is quiet, detached observation, Zhuangzi, which leads to correct action through non-effort, Lao Tzu. The path is not to conquer the world, but to understand yourself as an integral and harmonious part of the flow. There is no longer separation between your purpose and the flow of life. Detached acceptance is the portal to freedom. The final secret, the shift in consciousness that seals your transformation, is the recognition of your own essence, which has always been light. You have spent your life searching for happiness as a distant object, like a mirage that receded with every step you took. But the unconditional joy you were looking for was already here, in the void that you were trying to fill with effort, noise, and control. The power and lightness have always been within you. The free sage is not someone who has conquered something, adding to their being. They are someone who, courageously, stopped fighting against what is. The final epiphany is this: light and natural happiness is the sound of your non-resistance. It is what remains when you detach from the struggle, when you accept the total flow of life with a smile. The final invitation is to the silence that awakens. If this philosophy has echoed in the void you wish to fill, subscribe and activate the bell. Here, every word is an invitation to the silence that awakens unconditional joy. Comment below: I am the void that allows. This sentence seals your brotherhood with the wisdom of the flow.